Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review the show. Reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360, Monday to Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm joined by Joseph Casciaro and Joe Wolfond of The Score. Wolfond, we'll start with you because Cash is still wrestling with not just the music, but also with the headphones. So how you doing?
Great. That was, I think, the most enthusiastic intro I've ever heard from you. Are you that amped up about the play-in game?
I think I'm amped up for seeing 20-degree weather for the first time in months in Toronto. So that was nice. I was also amped up from going to the OVO practice facility for the second day in a row. I don't think anyone is prepared to play the Bulls this hard all season. So, they're hard at work. Cash, how you doing, man? You got the headphones?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
I'm ready to go.
Got you.
Notice Alex isn't here today. I guess he said play in for what?
No, Alex has been a good company, man. He's attending tonight's home opener with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think he's already turned his attention towards there. If you notice, his tweets have been like, one quarter Raptors, one quarter Succession, and then like one half Blue Jays.
I think that's about deserved.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, speaking of that play-in, I have exciting news on that front. So today we'll be giving away a pair of tickets to tomorrow's Raptors play-in game against the Chicago Bulls. To enter, listen for the code word in today's episode and then text the code word to 590-590. We will be providing the code word during the first segment towards the end. So probably in about 25 minutes or so. Do you guys want any notes from practice, or do you guys just want to talk about the playoffs?
Nick, say anything interesting?
No, not this time. I feel like we've definitely collectively stopped asking Nick about his comments and his own comments that he brought up on his own in regards to his own future. But I did ask him about how the Raptors are going to attack the Bulls, starting lineup, which has 4 guards in it, and then also what adjustments they might make if Patrick Williams starts. Is that intriguing you? Wolfond, I know you're a big.
I mean, if he actually gave you anything of substance, that's intriguing to me. But I imagine it was all pretty boilerplate stuff.
Pretty much for the 4 guard against the regular starting lineup. The emphasis is playing with force, going to the glass, offensively, especially finishing through contact. Winning the possession battle, just going through. I mean, pretty much what you would expect, right? You probably see OG in the post, Scotty in the post, Pascal obviously as well. So there's gonna be an emphasis there. If they start Patrick Williams, he didn't really necessarily say like I'm gonna change everything, but at the same time he did mention that the Bulls do have the ability to go a little bit smaller and switch more actions to contain dribble penetration. So if I had to guess, like this is more of a game I think for the bigger wings rather than for Fred and Jakob in the middle pick and roll. But you guys have any Raptors Bulls play-in thoughts?
I'm intrigued to see who they put on Pascal. We were talking about this off air before the show started, and we were both saying if they start with their smaller look, I guess Caruso. I mean, he's their best defender. He's the best perimeter defender in the game. Yeah. But I think they have a decision to make there with regards to do you start small and put Caruso on Pascal, or do you have Patrick Williams in there? Tough decision for them. But overall, I'm intrigued because these are 2 really good defensive teams. I mean, all year it's 5th and 11th. But if you go since the deadline, it's actually 1st and 6th because the Bulls have been the best defense since the deadline. The Raptors obviously have been a lot better since Yak got here. But it's also a 1-game situation, and it's such a small sample size that it's not like a series where you can be like, okay, here's how it should go. Here's how these teams should look because over the course of 4 to 7 games, they are who they are. It's such a small sample where it's like, yeah, they're both defensive teams who can't shoot and slog it out when it comes to the half court. But I don't know. It's a 1-game setting. Like, who's to say someone's not going to bust loose for like 6 threes or something just because it's a weird, random one-off. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I'd be concerned about, in addition to the fact that the Bulls are as good as they are defensively, in addition to the fact that Zach LaVine has played really well over the last little while and has an argument as the best player in this game, in addition to the fact that they have play-in P, Patrick Beverley.
Oh, gosh.
That, as much as you want to say both these teams are defensive and struggle on the offensive end, that's kind of true. But if you look at half-court efficiency, which, as we know, in the postseason does seem to be more indicative of success, the Bulls were actually a top 10 half-court offensive team this season. The Raptors were a bottom 6 half-court team. So,
yeah, that's on first shot possessions, though. And if you include offensive rebounds, I think the Raptors fare significantly better than that. The Bulls are not a big offensive rebounding team. The possession battle is going to be obviously a huge battleground, as it has been for the Raptors for the last 2 years. And I think also like a real big part of that, and what's going to be super interesting to me, is like the Bulls are a very low turnover team, as DeMar DeRozan led teams tend to be.
Sure.
Like he takes pretty good care of the basketball, and he tends to be part of offenses that are ISO heavy, that don't actually pass the ball all that much. And that makes it harder for teams that rely on forcing turnovers to actually do that if the ball isn't necessarily moving, right? So I'm curious to see what kind of pressure the Raptors apply in order to force those turnovers, because we know that their offense subsists on that. I do think it's interesting, you mentioned it's maybe a game for them to play through their wings more and not necessarily through the Fred Yak pick and roll that's kind of become the staple food of their offense, because the Bulls scheme is actually like they bring Vooch up to the level.
Yeah.
And
right.
I mean, that really gives Yak an opportunity to get, those rolling chances, right? Like 4-on-3s as a guy who can maybe score if they're bringing the tag over, like he can still get to that little push shot, but he can also be a 4-on-3 playmaker. And I actually think against that coverage, that's like not a bad look
No, that's fair.
for that pick and roll combination. Like maybe it'll be less Fred oriented because he's not going to have the pull up opportunities that he does against a drop coverage. But in terms of like his pick and roll passing, I think has come a really long way. I think it's been great, especially since Pirtle got there. So I would kind of like to see that be more of a focal point. I know they're going to have some of those size advantages in terms of like them having all these big wings on the floor and the Bulls having a bunch of guards out there, but like attacking a size mismatch against somebody like Caruso or Beverly in the post, I don't necessarily love that as much as like, bringing Vooch into the action and letting Pirtle make plays in space. Like I actually think ultimately that's going to be more fruitful.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think that in addition to that avenue, which is definitely one way to attack it, I do think that whoever is being guarded by DeMar or Levine in this case, like those guys, it's probably going to be Scotty and OG most likely.
Yeah.
You got to give them some touches, especially early on, just to see what you can do. Because I think that's one of the other points of emphasis was just like we got to make them work. Because obviously offensively they're going to make the Raptors work a lot. And Nick also said, by the way, as Aaron Rose tossed in at the end, a question about the second unit in terms of what's his confidence level in the second unit. Nick Nurse said, really high. They'll be just fine. I don't know if he was completely being fully honest about it, but I mean, what can you really say? Like, what? I have no confidence.
He was
at
asked
all.
this today or on April 1st?
No, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, would this be a game where you just play your starters 40 minutes?
I mean, look.
Every regular season game is a game where Nick plays the starters 40 minutes.
Between Nurse's propensity to play his starters a lot of minutes in general.
Yeah.
Add in the fact that this team's reserves are not good enough, and this team, regardless of who is coaching, would have to rely on their starters more than most teams. And then add in the fact that it is a one-game playing for your life situation. And I would be shocked if any starter, other than maybe if there's like foul trouble or something, I'd be shocked if any starter plays less than 38 minutes. Like I think every starter is going to play 38 to 40 plus. Gary, maybe if he's having a good game, will get time off the bench. I guess I assume Boucher and Achua will kind of be like a wait-and-see approach where they're going to get an opportunity at some point. But I think they'll also have a pretty quick leash if it's not there because it is a one-game situation. And other than that, Nick's not playing more than 8 guys tomorrow, is he?
No.
Yeah. And the 3 I'd say he's only playing 6 legit minutes guaranteed. And then Boucher and Achua are wild cards.
In case of foul trouble or something like that. But probably if he's looking at his whiteboard now and trying to parcel out the minutes, those guys are, I would imagine, slated for 12 to 15.
The one thing that they have an option to do is they could go smaller. We did see in their last game where they beat Chicago on February 28th. Even though they had Jakob Poeltl in, they actually closed with Scotty playing small ball 5. And the idea of that was so that they can switch a lot more pick and roll actions, contain the dribble penetration, and live with the opportunities where Scotty's guarding Vucevic, especially if Vucevic is hot on pick and pops, for example. It's harder for Jakob Poeltl to always get out to those. You might be able to sort of close smaller. And, of course, that would really require Gary to be on his game because he would be the extra guy who will come in. But again, this is will be more interesting if it were an actual series rather than just one game. You know what I mean? So it's hard to prepare for all this. That's about it from practice. I did ask Jakob Poeltl what made DeMar's pump fake so effective. You know, he kind of just talked. I mean, Yak is a great quote. He just gives you very, very straightforward answers, but he does think them through. And you know, he was really talking about how, you know, DeMar, unlike other guys, will fake like 2 or 3 times. Really, really like, you know, take shots from odd angles. And of course, you always kind of buy it. And of course, it's really about getting there first and then throwing the fake so that when the defender's trying to catch up, that's when he's able to capitalize. I mean, just shouts to Yak. I really enjoy him from a media perspective. You guys want to talk about the other playing games?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we'll knock out the playing games and then we'll talk about the playoffs proper because there's 4 series already set in stone. But you know, we do have a pair of playing games tonight. First, you have Miami and Atlanta. Miami's won 3 of these matchups this season. They beat them back-to-back in March. I mean, it feels like Miami's just like clearly the favorite here to me, but I'm curious in terms of what you guys think of this matchup sort of at a quick glance.
I think Miami should win, especially with it being a home game. And I mean, I've been singing Jimmy Butler's praises all season. I've been singing Jimmy Butler's praises for like a decade. But I think they have the best player in the matchup. They're at home. I do think they're the better team. They should win. But again, I mean, I hate to sound repetitive, but it is so hard in these single game situations because it's like, as I said, it's so much is left up to like randomization and variance, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident the Heat will win. And if it was a best of 7 series, I'd be like almost sure that the Heat will win. But I mean, they could lose.
Over me.
It's an all-time quote, man. I wonder if he'll give one of those quotes after a play-in game, but we'll see.
I mean, I was hoping we would get that Heat Sixers series just so maybe we could get a redux of that. But I think, look, the Hawks have a better offense than the Heat do. Like, that's their advantage in this matchup.
Yeah. Most teams have better offense than the Heat do.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, I think Miami's offense is like better equipped to exploit Atlanta's defensive weaknesses than vice versa. Even though Miami does play some defensive minuses, it's like frankly really impressive that they've managed to sustain like, you know, top 5 to 7 defense over the last 3-4 years, despite constantly having to play these defensive minuses. But they do it. Their infrastructure is really strong. Their schemes are really innovative. They play a ton of zone. And, you know, Bam and Jimmy, frankly, can cover for a lot. And in terms of like, you know, okay, what's Atlanta's bread and butter, right? It's middle pick and roll. Like that's what they're going to run. And that, I think that's not actually where Miami's defense really struggles. Like if you're trying to run your stuff and Bam is guarding the screener and pick and roll action, I mean, usually they're going to want to switch that. I know they're a little bit vulnerable on the backside of those switches because they don't have a ton of size and they don't have great rim protection behind it. But I mean, we've seen that take Trey out of his rhythm a ton. They completely smothered him in the playoffs last year. But even if they're not switching it and they've had Bam dropping back a little bit more this season, like in terms of their help principles and the way that they have guys helping and stunting from the wing, I don't know. I just feel like they have a pretty good beat on how to handle that Hawks offense. And I don't know, maybe now that Quinn Snyder is there, they have some more knuckleballs that they can throw. But generally, I think that the issue with Atlanta's offense is how predictable it is. Like people know what they're trying to do and what they want to get to. And that makes it easy to game plan for in a lot of ways. And at the same time, like you have Trey who can just be a scheme buster, even if you know exactly what's coming.
Yeah.
But I trust Miami's defense more so than I trust Atlanta's defense to deal with like, you know, Jimmy basically just hunting Trey, like pulling him into action over and over and over and over again and making the Hawks figure it out. You know, what are you going to do? Are you going to switch it? Are you going to put 2 on the ball and let us play out of that? They again, Miami's offense hasn't been great all season, but they have that button that they can push. Whereas I don't know that the Hawks have that same button. Like there's not the same sort of vulnerability, I don't think, in Miami's defense.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what you're speaking to right there is like both like the gift and the curse of having Trey on the team. And obviously he's very productive, but there are certain trade-offs that come with it. You've already heard reports that, you know, I think Kevin O'Connor put it out there that the Hawks front office has the green light to trade Trae Young this summer if they want to. First off, I would hope so. I mean, that's what the front office is there to do, make decisions. So if they, you know, hopefully they have the green light to do some things like that. But Yeah, but if you had to guess, do you think Trae Young's on Atlanta next year?
I would still say yes, but I think next year would perhaps be the make or break year. Like, I feel like they went out and hired Quinn Snyder.
Right.
You probably want to see what a Trae Young-led offense looks like with a full year of Quinn Snyder, or at least like coming out of training camp and him having an ability to like set the team and the offensive function and everything the way he wants it, as opposed to hiring Quinn Snyder. Trae plays for him for like 2 months. You know, Wolfond made a good point about how a Quinn Snyder offense can throw more knuckleballs at you and can be more complex than most offensive schemes and stuff like that. But it's hard to implement all that with 2 months left in the season when you're a coach that takes over midseason for a team that is trying to win now. So I just think it wouldn't really make sense unless they're so blown away by an offer that they literally think like, we'll never get better than this for Trae. But I have a hard time believing that'll be the case. So I think he's got 1 year left in him. And I think it's actually interesting, not that this is one of the topics we're going to talk about today, the parallels with him and Luka, where, you know, same draft class, obviously the picks that like they were traded for each other. Atlanta did technically choose Trae over Luka. And then for a while it was like, well, Dallas obviously got the better end of that deal, and they very much did. Luka's the better player.
Yeah, clearly.
But then, you know, Trae had the postseason success first, and then Luka goes to the conference finals last year, and they both look like they ended up in maybe not ideal situations or with teams that haven't properly built around them, and they obviously share some blame in that too. But it is interesting how, 4 or 5 years into both of their careers, they remain very tethered and on these kind of parallel courses that have them both. You know, in Luka's case, it's different because the rumor is more that he might ask out as soon as 2024, right. Whereas with Trae, it's that the Hawks might actually be willing to let him go. But it is interesting that they are in those talks already.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see what the trade market looks like for a guy like Trae. I don't think he's a fit here in Toronto, to be honest. But, I mean, I don't know.
I mean...
He's not a fit.
Okay,
right?
all right. Maybe I'll ask the question then.
He is, as flawed as he is on the defensive end, and I get that. One, he is an unfathomably good offensive player.
Yeah, of course.
Who can score and create for others with the best of them. And
he's going to have Jakob Poeltl averaging 20 points a game.
And listen.
He's also going to have guys like OG griping about their roles even more.
Yeah, to be fair. I know. And I was going to say, definitely there are challenges even on the offensive end, both in terms of how offenses run when he's involved with them and how his teammates receive that offense. But I will say, for anyone that kind of just scoffs at it because of the defense or any concerns that are there, which I completely understand, the thing I always tell people is when they bring up like kind of flawed stars like Trae and think, wow, I wouldn't want him or whatever. It's like there are maybe a handful of superstars in the NBA that are flawed. Like, I don't even think there's like that are completely flawless where you can just be like, I'll take that guy. There's not a flaw. Like, a lot of superstars do still come with a flaw here or there that make building teams around them not ideal. You know, like it's not, there is a handful. And yeah, like if your argument for not wanting Trae is simply, well, he's not one of those 5 guys, it's like, okay, but then
you're not making a lot of trades.
Right. At that point, you're never going to trade for a star unless it's one of these like once in a generation stars. And again, I will give you, Trae does come with more warts, let's say, than most stars at that level. But I don't think it's as easy as some people make it seem when it's just like, oh, he sucks at defense and guys don't like playing with him. I would never trade for him. I think it's a little deeper than that.
Well, it's deeper than that in that there's a difference between sucking at defense and being, you know, literally one of the 5 worst big minute defenders in the league, which he has been pretty much since he got drafted. So it comes with more complications, I think, than most of those other stars that you would put in that bucket of being, oh, really good, but kind of flawed. At the same time, I think, you know, the talent is undeniable and would be really difficult to pass up if you had an opportunity to acquire him. But I think what is potentially going to be prohibitive for teams is like, okay, well, you got to put something serious on the table to get him. And then it's like, to what extent are you compromising the infrastructure that would theoretically protect someone like Trae Young or help amplify him? And, you know, like in the Raptors case, like start thinking about what it would cost, and maybe you start to get a bit skittish about what the team would look like afterwards, you know, and would there really be enough there to make that worthwhile? You know, I still don't know if you'd be
have to trade a lot of the guys that you would want to keep if you had Trae Young.
Exactly.
Because this is how the phone call is going to go with Landry Fields, which, by the way, it's kind of funny that Landry Fields
is their GM now.
Shout out to Landry Fields, man. Raptors legend. Not really.
Landry, remember when we did you that solid gave you that 3-year deal so that what was it? So that
they were trying to block the Knicks
so
from
the
being
Knicks
able to
couldn't
get
sign
Steve Nash.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Steve
We're-
Nash did not sign with the Knicks or Toronto. He signed in L.A. But it led to Kyle Lowry being here. That Kyle Lowry was Plan B, by the way. So that all worked out
well.
But what Landry's going to say is that he's going to be like, well, first off, stop playing the PS Vita commercial. Delete that off YouTube if you haven't seen it already. And the second thing will be, give me Scotty. Of course, the Raptors will say no. But then he'll be like, fine, give me Pascal. The Raptors probably still say no. I mean, I wouldn't say yes to trade for Pascal, especially given the roster construct. Maybe you guys would say yes. You guys are looking more like closely. Are you guys having a conversation about this?
I would have a conversation about it. I wouldn't jump at the opportunity to trade Pascal Siakam for Trae Young, but I think you'd have to at least have a conversation about it. Again, depending on what's on the table and like the kind of team you can then surround Trae with. Like, I think it's at least a conversation.
He's too big
worth
of a
having.
defensive liability, man. He's just. But of course, offensively, I get the case. There's no doubt. Yeah.
I will say, and Wolfond knows because I've brought this up 100 times talking about the Hawks over the last couple of years. I'm not giving any credit to Trae Young on the defensive end. Far from that. But as bad as he is, the Hawks have cobbled together decent defensive units at times with him, even on the court. And their starting lineup is an example of that. Like 2 of the last 3 years, their starters' defensive rating has been pretty much elite, even with, like, that's obviously including him as their starters. So as bad as he is, there's not really evidence to suggest that like it's impossible to defend with him on the court. Is it harder? Absolutely. Do you have to be very careful about who you surround him with and your roster construction? Absolutely. But it's not impossible. Okay. It's far from it, actually.
Well, I mean, the other thing, too, I was just like, well, who do you pair him with, right? Because assuming you bring Trae in, Fred's gone.
Is he?
What? You can't go with a Fred-Trae backcourt, man. That's not going to work.
I think
it's
maybe
just so small. You would literally be building the smallest backcourt in the league.
Right. Well, I mean, like Fred, I know Kyle has functional size that is different from Trae Young's, but in terms of just like raw height, Kyle is shorter. So we've already listen. I think if this was like Fred of last year or a couple of years ago, I think it can work. I think maybe with Fred as a somewhat diminished defender, it becomes less tenable. But there was a point in time where I think that could have actually really worked because Fred was. I mean, he's still incredible in help, right? It's more that now you're looking at potentially having 2 on-ball defensive liabilities at the point of attack, whereas like Fred previously was like elite on the ball and elite off the ball, where you could rely on him to like contain dribble penetration and maybe stop the ball at the point of attack, but then also provide cover for Trae with the way that he can help. Whereas now, like, you're still getting that help, but I don't know, we've gotten really in the weeds talking about this completely ludicrous hypothetical.
This thing's not going to happen. It really is not going to happen. I mean, like, they might even call for OG. At that point, you might have to have a conversation, I might think. But even then, I mean, like, OG's the exact kind of guy you want to keep around so that you can protect Trae. This is what I'm trying to say. Like, the conversation idea was just sort of like, he's an awkward guy to trade for, even though his stats are great. I think the other relevant Raptor question I had based on this one play-in game is who would you rather face if you're the Raptors? Because obviously the Raptors, if they win tomorrow, they still have to play the loser of the 2 between Miami and Atlanta. Which team do you think the Raptors have a better chance against? I feel like they low-key match up better with Miami than Atlanta.
Okay, so
they have not been able to contain Trae Young at all.
I do get that in theory, and the regular season results actually back that argument up.
Yeah.
But I still think there's something to be said of like sometimes the easiest answer is just right there for you. And it's like, if you ask me, would I rather the Raptors have to go to Atlanta and beat Trae Young's Atlanta Hawks or go to Miami and beat Jimmy Butler's Miami Heat in a one game? I'm just being serious. Sometimes it really is that easy. Fair. And though it does seem that they might match up better against Miami in a one game setting, I just think the Hawks are way more gettable than the Heat are. That's not to say, like, I think it's impossible that they beat the Heat, but I would trust Miami to take care of business more in that situation than I would Atlanta.
I agree. And to sort of take it back to what we were talking about before, where like Atlanta is the better offensive team. Like the Raptors have struggled more with Atlanta's offense than they have with Miami's in a situation where you can prepare for a single opponent rather than, okay, this is our scheme and we run it throughout the regular season. I know there are tweaks from game to game, but like the Raptors typically kind of do what they do. I think if you boil down the Raptors' defensive philosophy to like one concept, it's basically, let's find the thing that your offense is sort of built around, and let's make that as difficult as possible.
Right. It's a disrupt your rhythm, take you out of your timing.
Yeah. And so that doesn't always work, right? Like, I always come back to like that game against the Lakers, right? Where they're like, LeBron wasn't playing in that game. So what's the thing that we're going to take away that your offense theoretically really needs to survive? It's like, we're not going to let Anthony Davis get going. OG's going to guard him and is literally not going to help at all when Anthony Davis goes to screen. It's just going to hug him so he has no chance to roll. And it's an interesting theory. Anthony Davis had a really quiet night. I don't remember what he finished with.
He had 8 points in that game, and he was averaging, I think, 30 to 35.
Right. But other guys on the Lakers went off, and so the Raptors lost. You know, like
but even Ham, Darvin Ham, who's like not really considered like an X's and O genius or anything like that. By the second quarter, he's like, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put 80 in ball screens, and it's going to be a 2-on-1 every single time."
So in that sense, I think like Miami's offense, despite being worse than Atlanta's, is still a little bit more multifaceted. In terms of like the off-ball actions they run, in terms of just like there's variety there that I don't think is quite there with Atlanta's offense. And I know,
but Atlanta has that spontaneity with like Trey. That's the thing. The Raptors, whenever they trap Trey, he just eludes out of those, and then you're really screwed. That's why I'm not enjoyed playing Atlanta.
His passing ability is a bit of a, I mean, it's like the kryptonite to the Raptors.
It's his best. It's the best part of his game.
He's like one of the 3 best passers in the league.
Yep.
So that's big, but at the same time, I mean, I know it's one game and it's not totally indicative, but like there was a game early in the year when the Raptors turned him over 10 times.
Sure.
You know, because they were applying that pressure on him. They were also just using length on him, right? Like Precious was his primary defender for a bunch of possessions in that game. So was Scotty. So was OG. Using length on him, still bringing a bit of pressure, but maybe a little bit less than usual, and just sort of like trusting the length on ball. And then they were just like really well prepared in that game. They were like jumping all of his passes. Like their reads were on point. I think they can do that in a way that like, to me, Miami's offense is still, despite not having that one guy who can do that to their scheme, like their offense on the whole is still a bit more unpredictable to me. And then also like, if you're thinking about the Raptors offense and who you trust them to have more success against, like I would just worry about them being able to score, especially in the half court against Miami's D.
Yeah, Raptors Heat.
Miami's going to zone them into oblivion. You know that.
Raptors Heat for the 8 seed would finish like 79-77. Although, to be fair, Raptors Bulls in the first half of the play-in might finish like that. But
so you're saying take the under on both playing games.
Not to be a downer here, but this entire conversation just kind of speaks to how, I won't say depressing, but somewhat pointless it all seems. Like, okay, don't get me wrong. It'll hopefully be a fun atmosphere tomorrow. And obviously, like, the players want to win. And the fans should want them to, like, at this point, they're there. You want them to win and move on. And who knows, like, maybe put a scare into Milwaukee. They won't. But
what they're going to do, say boo?
But that's my point. Like, that's why even just having this conversation is like, oh, if they beat Chicago, who do they have the best chance? It's like, if they beat Chicago, which, though they should win, is very far from a guarantee, then they got to go on the road where they have not been reliable at all this season. And haven't always shown up when you feel like their back's against the wall, and they got to win a game like that. And then if they do those 2 things, if they check those boxes, they fly to Milwaukee to play the best team in basketball, led by the best player in basketball. When they
have you seen getting swept? Right?
Oh no, relax, come on, man.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's just hard to drum up excitement.
That's what happens though.
It's one thing when it's like, okay, for example, the Thunder, right?
Yeah.
As the 10 seed going into that play. Like, if you're a fan of the Thunder and they they overachieved and they're so desperate to get any kind of like postseason experience. Right. Them even just getting to the first round. Heck, if they even get swept, but it's there's like 2 competitive games, the Thunder fans are going to feel really good about themselves. They got to the playoffs. They, won the 2 play-in games. It was exciting. The Raptors situation, even though there's some good young talent, is so different where it's like, their 2 best players are in their prime. One of them's a borderline all-NBA or is going to turn 30 soon or 29. And we're talking about if they win the 9-10 game, can they win on the road? And then if they do that, they go play the best team in basketball. It's just like,
no, if we're being 100% real, the best thing for them would be to lose and get in the lottery, right? Like,
I mean, they could have made that decision at the trade deadline, but they chose not to, right? So this is the road they got to like play.
Yeah, they are here. I'm not saying that they're going to try to lose. I'm just saying, if we're being honest here, the best thing for the team in the big picture would be to lose this game against the Bulls and to get a lottery pick.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that because, as we mentioned up top, we are giving away a pair of tickets. You guys really helped with the promo on this one, guys.
My bad.
No, it's all good. Free tickets. We are giving away a pair of tickets to tomorrow's Raptors playing game against the Chicago Bulls. The code word is Raptors. Just Raptors. All right, text Raptors to 590-590 right now to enter for your chance to win. And, of course, if you don't win with us, make sure you secure your tickets at Ticketmaster.ca. The playing game. Look, listen, I'm excited to see at least what kind of atmosphere there will be, because it's one of those things where, as you mentioned, you got to get there early, right? Because it's at 7 p.m. and
Could
it's
be
going
your
to start
last chance to see Nick Nurse coach
public.
the Raptors.
Yeah, public service announcement.
Could be.
Is he going to squat? We
get there
one
early.
more spot for.
It's a 7 p.m. tip. I think sometimes the national TV games actually start right at 7 rather than the 7:10. So I'm not 100% sure if that'll be the case. But regardless, if you're going to the game, despite everything I've already said about how hopeless situation is, at this point, they're there.
Yeah, of course.
You want it to be a great atmosphere. You want to enjoy the fact that it is this unique thing, the first ever play-in game in Toronto, whatever. Like, it's a one-game win or go home thing. So you might as well get there on time, enjoy the festivities, enjoy the pregame atmosphere, create some sort of cool atmosphere in the arena.
Give DeMar a standing O during player intros.
All right, maybe not in the play-in, but regardless, that's my PSA. Get there. If you're going tomorrow, make the most of it. They are here. It is what it is. Get there on time. And just be ready. Be ready for some play-in basketball. Catch the fever.
Might get to see play-in P jump up on the scorer's table at the end of the game.
I've already told Matt Devlin, if Patrick Beverley jumps on his scorer's table right where Matt Devlin is, I need Matt Devlin to pull like a WWE move and just like pull him off the ropes, man.
You need Matt Devlin to be
Don't let him
Rudy
do
Gobert.
that to you, Matt. Don't let Patrick Beverley dance over you. Anyway, so the code word is Raptors. Text Raptors to 590-590 for your chance to win tickets. All right, we are going to take a break. I've been your host, Will Lou, and you've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. When we come back, we will preview the rest of the play-in. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Lewis. Continue to be joined by Jessica Casciaro and Joe Wolfond. Listen to Pound the Rock. It's, the best podcast covering the NBA at large in Toronto. I'd easily say that, if not to all of North America, So
appreciate it, man.
Is that enough of a plug?
I think that's satisfactory. We appreciate you.
Are you guys still editing the podcast yourselves?
That's right.
Yeah, we alternate. Whoever hosts edits.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you guys still referring to the Google Doc I left you guys?
No, I don't think so. I think when you first left, we did because neither one of us ever edited it.
Because you
were always editing.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for the first few weeks we had to go by that. But
I thought you guys were going to be big time now and have your own editors.
Yeah, I'm waiting for an intern.
You'd
That's
think.
a Derek.
Yeah.
That's a JR.
Waiting for an intern.
Yeah. All right. That's enough.
Anyone wants to reply? No, I'm kidding.
No, it's okay. We have less than 20 minutes to talk about the remaining 2 play-in series. So we talked about the 2 in the East. The other one taking place tonight, Lakers versus the Timberwolves. Cash, I just feel like this is right up your alley. Can I just get your thoughts on Rudy Gobert punching another man in the chest during a must-win Game 82?
I mean, the issue for me was that he punched and ran. He did the old Carmelo punch and run, if you remember that from back in the old Nuggets-Knicks brawl.
I do remember that one. That one was
that's
funny,
cowardly in its own right. But to do that against your teammate, like punching and then backing away before the guy can get back to you is one act of cowardly. But to do that to your teammate in the huddle is another level of cowardly. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
2, the fact that Kyle Anderson said what he said to Rudy Gobert in the huddle of a meaningful Game 82 tells you a lot. It tells you something because maybe in the average locker room argument or something, you can say, okay, he might have crossed the line, but like it happens, teammate. But to say that in the huddle of a meaningful Game 82, when you know that's how the NBA perceives them, which Draymond then recently said on a pod as well, that's another thing. And then 3, I think it just adds to the hilarity of a week and a half ago, Karl Anthony Towns, after a poor performance and a Timberwolves loss in typical Towns fashion, talking about how he was going to talk to the team and he was going to say stuff like about leadership and how it was going to lead to them playing winning basketball. And literally the first game after that, they lost, and it was as 19.5 point favorites to the tanking Blazers, I think. It was the worst biggest NBA upset in like 30 years or 28 years or something like that. And Towns took 3 or 4 shots in that game. And then 3 games after his supposed leadership talk, the team absolutely splinters. Guys fighting in the huddle. Jaden McDaniels breaking his hand on a brick wall.
Just because he picked up 2 fouls in 9 minutes. Yo, relax.
Maybe this is exactly the time of the type of spirit and fire that Karl Anthony Towns was talking about. Maybe this is exactly what he wanted to see.
Yeah. The guy with the least amount of dog in him in those chest x-rays is turns out his leadership talk didn't work.
Yeah.
Shocking.
He got that cat in him.
Yeah.
That's what they be saying about Karl Anthony Towns.
Wow. Well, I was going to say, to Cash's point about how Kyle Anderson saying what he said in that huddle says something to him. It says something to me that they actually went through with the 1-game suspension.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Because, they definitely talked to the players and they're like, what do you guys think we should do? And they're
if the players on that team wanted Rudy Gobert to play in that game, he'd be playing in that game.
I think the players are probably disappointed it was only a 1 game.
No,
I'm kidding.
Come on.
I'm kidding.
But, like, what's going to be interesting to me is, like, okay, so let's say they lose this game to the Lakers, which I fully expect them to.
Yeah.
Man, honestly, whatever the Wolves players think about Gobert, whatever fans or analysts think about Gobert and his impact, this would have been a really nice game to have him. Like, the Lakers are a team, they're not like a big jump shooting team, right? They thrive on getting to the rim. So having a guy who is still, in spite of the whatever interpersonal issues he may cause and whatever steps back he might have taken this season from his peak, still like one of the 5 best rim protectors in basketball at worst. Would have been really nice to have that guy for this game. So let's say they lose this game, and in no small part because they don't have Gobert there.
Or McDaniels, or Naz Reid.
But, like, okay, we can get to that. But we'll start with Gobert. So they lose this game, and now they have to go, and they'll play on the they'll play at home. They'll play at home. Then Gobert's going to come back And after losing that first, play-in game, now they have a literal must-win, like a winner-go-home game. And Gobert's just going to be back and everything's going to be hunky-dory after that. Like, how's that going to go?
That sets up him for the hero arc, man. The redemption arc. It's right there.
That's right up Cat's alley, too, because Towns first came back when he hit those free throws. He was saying the same thing. I'm him, the redemption, like all this stuff. It's like,
guys, no one's him when you're in the play-in, man.
This is what I'm saying. Like, the Wolves just reek of, I wouldn't even say front running because they've never really been close enough to the front to run, but they kind of have a front runner's attitude without being good enough to even be a front runner. And maybe it's unfair for us that aren't like in the locker room to say that says
mid runners. They're mid runners.
Like says something about Towns, but I do think at some point, even though he wasn't there for a lot of the season, like I think there's something rubbing off on the rest of the team from it. Like he's been there long enough now, and this kind of, I wouldn't even say behavior because it's not, but like this kind of stench has been there a long time. And when Jimmy Butler hinted at it, and I know a lot of people, like some people took it to heart, but there were others that said, oh, like that's just Jimmy being Jimmy. He's kind of bullying the young guys. Like he's being too harsh on them. But as the years have gone on, and it's not just Jimmy who said it, I think that point has kind of been proven that like Cat's just not that guy as a leader. And I do think it's had, reverberating effects on the team and on the franchise.
Yeah, that's fair. Because, like, again, they swapped out everyone else, right? Wiggins is gone. Wiggins had his redemption arc, right? Obviously, last season.
Yeah. But that can be fine if, and as he showed when Towns was out this year, is ready to step up and be that guy. And I think he very much is. The franchise is clearly banking on him doing that.
Yeah.
But
can he single-handedly win this game, by the way, tonight, or no?
Against the Lakers?
No, not him single-handedly, but him and Towns together. Like, if Towns actually shows up, then,
There's an argument there. You space out the floor. I think they play better with either center, by the way, rather than both.
Offensively, yeah.
Yeah. Defensively, yeah. Well,
like
obviously Gobert helps. There's no doubt.
Well, okay, so the Wolves are this team that's built around being big, right? Now Towns is like their only healthy big man. Naz Reid is out. Gobert is out. Jaden McDaniel's not a big, but, like, he was a 6'9", basically 1-4 defender who they were probably going to throw at LeBron.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he's out. Yep.
I don't know what they're going to do now. Like they're this team that's built around being big that is now going to be quite small. Playing against a pretty terrifying Lakers front line. They're going to be up against it. But yeah, like the 2-man game with Edwards and Cat can be really devastating. Like they can kind of stretch the Lakers out a bit, pull AD away from the rim maybe, although maybe you just stick AD. Like if the Wolves are going to start Kyle Anderson.
Yeah. Put him there.
Put AD on Kyle Anderson, put Vanderbilt on Towns, and maybe you kind of solve that issue and you're not getting spaced out. Yeah, it's really hard to talk yourself into Minnesota winning this game.
Especially when the Lakers are not your typical 7 seed. Even as the favorite in this game, as the 7 and the 7-8, if Minnesota was healthy, I would still say this is a much bigger mismatch than a usual 7-8 play-in. In their current state, I think this is like, I would be shocked. I actually think this is the biggest mismatch of the 4 play-in games. Some people might say New Orleans, OKC. I don't think so.
I don't know, to be honest.
I think this is it. And I mean, I've been talking for weeks now. I've written about it. I've done videos about it. Wolfond and I talked about it on the pod about how if you look at the eye test, like the way they play, the numbers of this new look Lakers team, for as much as I clowned Rob Pelinka, and rightfully so in my opinion, for the way he had built this team and the front office there and everything, the team that they revamped mid-season, they essentially filled all the holes and like addressed all of their most glaring needs in one fell swoop on deadline day, because the depth issues, the secondary creation issues, the shooting issues have been solved pretty much by D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, the return of Austin Reeves, who had been hurt, where now you look at it and it's like they've definitely got playoff caliber depth. They've got much better shooting. They went from being the worst shooting team in the league. They were making less than 10 3-pointers per 100 possessions before the moves, but dead last by a mile. They're like middle of the pack since the deadline. 2 full extra 3-pointers per game, per 100 possessions made. They have the second best defense since making those moves. Between Russell and Reeves and Brown. The shooting's obviously there between Russell and Reeves. The secondary creation is now there.
Yeah.
Shooting, defense, secondary creation around seemingly healthy LeBron and AD. They're cooking with something. And like I'm not saying they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams, but like they went from being, to me, a laughing stock that I would have been surprised if they even made the play-in to now, in my opinion, having an actual chance to win the whole thing. I think they have a shot. And if someone had told you that 2.5 months ago, and also just shout out LeBron too, because, 38-year-old LeBron, all the minutes on his body, all-time scoring leader, everything. Mm-hmm. In this era where everyone's complaining about load management every other day and on every show and talking head and whatever. And then LeBron James misses a month with a pretty serious foot injury, comes back, throws himself into the fire in the middle of a very hotly contested playoff race. And since coming back, played in the Lakers' final 8 games, no games off. It included a back-to-back, plays at least 29-plus minutes in all of 8 of those games. Just shout out LeBron for that because, again, in an era where people are always clowning on superstars for rest days and whatever, for the 38-year-old all-time leading scorer to come back and not take a single day off after missing a month and like high leverage minutes, pretty incredible. This team can win.
Not only that, but playing so well during that stretch when AD was out that he was able to keep the team afloat to the point that it actually made sense for them to go and make those moves at the deadline.
Exactly. No, they kind of just got it all together like right before the buzzer, but I do actually really like the way they're sitting. I also think that like obviously getting Westbrook there was a mistake, but getting him out has really opened up that space for Austin Reeves to really step into that role and really shine. And he's been hyper efficient. We'll see if they get the same whistle, obviously, in the playoffs, but obviously they do a really great job of pressuring the basket and they have a lot of tricky players. So, no, they're flowing really well. And oddly enough, the Lakers vibes are kind of pretty immaculate, which is, not what you have ever said about the Lakers for the last 2 years. But
18-8 since Beasley, Russell, and Vanderbilt debuted. The best record in the West. Only the Bucks are better league-wide since then. And they went 18-8 with LeBron playing 11 of 26 games. Mm-hmm. So again, like as much as we've clowned the Lakers all year, and rightfully so for the way they came into the year and the construction issues the last couple of years, do not take this team lightly. Like they very much can win.
Okay, so that's the headline matchup. The sexy blogger pick, which is what Fran Fraschilla infamously said about OG Anunoby, maybe Fran or Jay Billis, one of those two, is Pelicans Thunder. Wolfond, I'll start with you, not because I feel like you are the sexy blogger on this panel, but I feel like this is up your alley. What do you like about this matchup?
You're saying I'm not the sexy blogger on this panel?
No, you are. You're the most blogger of all of us, that's for sure.
Okay, so I'm really interested to see, like, the Pelicans, in terms of field goal percentage allowed, have been the worst rim protecting team in basketball this year.
Damn, is JV on that team? Sorry. That's an argument from 2014. I'm sorry, that just popped out of my mind. I'm sorry.
JV had like 3 or 4 seasons there where he was like an above average rim protector.
He was, yeah,
statistically. This hasn't been one of those seasons, but that's also because the Pelicans have him actually like playing up the level a lot more than he's used to, and so it's not all on him, but his rim protection also just hasn't been as good as it's been in past seasons. So they're going up against this Thunder team that like their entire offense is just built around driving the ball. Number 1 in the league in drives by a lot. Number 1 in the league in rim volume. Like, okay, so can you just stop them from getting there, I guess? Because if you're letting them get there a ton and you don't have the rim protection to stop them, I don't know, it's going to be pretty problematic. They do have Herb Jones to throw at Shea.
Yep.
I mean, you can only really do so much against Shea as an individual defender. Like, there's going to have to be a lot of help involved, and if they can just sort of pack the paint and try to suppress, the Thunder's driving game that way and just bank on the guys around Shea and Giddey and Dort, like guys who really like to get into the teeth of the defense, Jalen Williams, and just say, like, I don't know, dare them to make shots, basically. Like, that's the big weakness with the Thunder's offense. I guess that's how they're going to try and manage it. And, that has a good chance of working for them. Like, the Thunder aren't a great jump shooting team. They're going to be on the road for this game. They're untested. Most of these guys have never played in a game of this magnitude before.
It's pretty much just Shea and Dort, right?
Yeah. Who had that one playoff run when CP was there. They went 7 with Houston.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think they've got Isaiah Joe, and who else on that team is really a shooter that you trust to kind of make a team pay for loading up in the middle.
That's fair. I feel like you could, if this were like, if Nick was coaching the Pelicans, would it not be one of those opportunities where you just like hard blitz Shea and force him to get rid of the ball. Maybe not even let him get into the paint.
Yeah, I think so. But the problem with that is that the Thunder don't run conventional pick and rolls. Like they're mostly having guards screen, and that's because they usually have 4 guards on the floor at one time, and so it's not like they barely play any traditional big men. So the battleground here is going to be like, okay, can the Pelicans punish the Thunder for being super small?
Sure.
Where like maybe JV is like mashing guys in the post and they're running a bit of their offense through him. And I mean, Ingram's, that's the other thing. Like the Pelicans aren't like a big get to the rim team themselves. Like
right.
Ingram.
They're a big pull up in the mid range.
Exactly.
So Ingram's been awesome the last 2 months. Like he was bad and injured for most of the season, but the last month and a half, he came on like great. He was one of the best players in the league, I'd say, the last 6 weeks of the season. And his playmaking has been awesome.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't know if that is necessarily a weakness that their offense is built to exploit, unless they want to run more of their offense through JV, I guess, but maybe they do. But then it's like at the other end, okay, the Thunder are going to be small and they're going to be moving around fast and setting guard screens and things like that. And like they can make JV really uncomfortable and maybe play him off of the floor. And then, the issue with the Pelicans' lack of like rim protection, I guess, gets magnified that much more. I kind of like the Thunder in this matchup. I feel like it's a good matchup for them and maybe not the best matchup for the Pelicans, even though I think the Pelicans are like a better team. Like they have more good players, even without Zion playing. There are more good players on the Pelicans than there are on the Thunder. But stylistically, I think that it kind of favors OKC.
That's fair.
Well, I agree. I was going to say.
You got 10 seconds. So
I think Shea against a team that can't protect the rim is trouble for that team. I think even though the Thunder are the biggest underdog of the play-in teams, everything's coming up Thunder for the 8 seed. No Zion for New Orleans. All the stuff going on in Minnesota. Thunder coming for that 8 seed.
That'd be really fun, by the way. I really would love to see Shea in a full series. But anyway, that does it for us today. I've been your host, Will Lou, and you've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Thanks once again to Joseph Casciaro and Joe Wolfond. Listen to Pound the Rock. Our road producer, Derek Brandale and Jennifer Rolnick, helping with the YouTube stream. We'll be back to talk more about Raptors Bulls tomorrow somehow.